everybody. We're live with Alex Klenman, CEO of Azincourt Energy today. And the reason that we're talking with Alex specifically is because did your company put out a little bit of news today that I'm going to say some people will see as negative. Not necessarily negative, but definitely there's a crowd out there that hears a certain key phrase and thinks, oh my God, the sky's falling. And there are other people that understand a little better. So wanted to get you on camera to answer the pertinent questions. Why don't you tell the people what's coming up for Azincourt?
Yeah, no, what we announced yesterday after market, and that was only because the placement came together yesterday, so we had to announce yesterday. So I'll back it up. A few weeks back, we announced the discovery of about an 800-meter alteration zone at our East Preston project while we were drilling, and that's a significant technical achievement. It's a little hard for retail to digest because it's such a technical thing, but the long and the short of it is you got to have alteration to find the deposits, and we've got it in spades. We've since grown that 800 meters to about 1,700 meters. It's quite exciting. In any case, once we put that news out, it became apparent that the institutional support that we've garnered over the last year was eager to continue to support. So they were offering money. And if you've ever been an explorer, particularly in a space that has been beaten down up until recently, and that is the uranium space, if you've ever fed a feral cat, that's what we're like. So you put a bowl of food down in front of us and we're going to growl and we're going to eat it all. And so when you put money in front of an explorer, don't expect us not to take it. So we took it. But what that did was it created, we already had 500 million shares out. And despite what people think of my desire to be the first venture company with 1 billion shares in circulation, that wasn't the case. So we decided to do a very light 2.5 to 1 consolidation that the funds were aware of prior to the closing of the placement, and not one order was pulled, which tells you the support that we continue to have. So we wanted to tighten the capital structure. We felt that that was very needed moving forward, and I can explain more as we go along here as to why the timing was right.
So the TLDR on this is here's you. Hey, we've got some uranium, and here's the institutions.
Yeah, basically what we're saying is, look, what we found here in this drill round is significant. It isn't, as of yet, determined to be uranium bearing. We have every reason to believe it is. We have assays coming back. We had 10 times background levels of radiation. We don't believe that that radiation was specifically the result of other radioactive materials like potassium or thorium and things like that. So we're quite encouraged to see what the assays return. But nevertheless, to get 1,700 meters of alteration is a big deal. You have major deposits found by chasing alteration zones: Key Lake, Millennium, MacArthur River, all found by chasing alteration zones, very similar to what we're seeing. So obviously that's a very positive thing, and the funds were very eager to continue, even though they knew we don't need the money. They want to put money in. And when we said, well, that's going to bloat our share structure quite heavily, even more, and we suggested that we may do a consolidation shortly thereafter, it didn't phase the funds.
Like there's consolidations and there's consolidations, right? Like a consolidation of like, hey, the stock's at 1.50 and we can't get it to 2. You take what you get.
Yeah.
Consolidation of, hey, we've got 500 million shares out there. We're going to pull it back to 250 million.
Yeah.
Like that's not any sort of roller coaster downwards. It's a cleaning house.
Yeah, and I think people, though, they're conditioned to seeing consolidations as a negative, and they're conditioned that most, if not all, consolidations result in a backup after the consolidation. So you lose money in the long run. But why we think this timing is perfect is obviously, look, we now have almost 14 million in the bank again. We have this really solid drill program we just finished with excellent results. We have sector wins behind us. We all expect spot to be 60, 70, 80, 90, $100 in the next year or less, or in that range. And so, to do it at the beginning of the bull makes perfect sense particularly on the back of positive news. And, you know, one of the things that this was the flow through financing. So we had more hard dollars in our account than we did flow. So we were beginning to start to spend hard dollars in the ground. And if you've got flow to put in the ground, that's always a better scenario for us. And so now we have equal amounts, almost flow and hard. We move forward, you know, with an incredibly strong treasury. Again, I like to ask people if you can find other drill stage companies, pre-discovery drill stage companies like Azincourt.
That much cash? That's not
that much cash. Yeah. Show me, because I think it's very rare, and it speaks to a lot of support for the project and for what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Well, and the support is coming from institutional guys who, you know, as much as the average Joe can go out there and do their due diligence, go through your news releases, go through your bank statements, the big guys that are going to drop 12 million, 10 million bucks on your head, they're doing some real due diligence. They're like sending guys out. Right. They're making sure that your machines that go ding are going ding. And, you know, generally you don't go too far wrong by following that big money.
No, and you realize, you know, that the institutional money is typically non-risk money. They don't like to take risks, yet they're taking risks here in the pre-discovery driller, which it almost de-risks the deal in a lot of ways to see that kind of money pour into it. Obviously, right. they feel positive. One thing I wanted to mention too is one of the things, you know, you may like Azincourt. You may come in and you may see, look, good projects. We've got a great VP exploration who's made significant discovery. We have institutional support. We've got a nice website, you know, all the nice things. We look good, but then all of a sudden you might come to that share structure and you might go, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the blind date when she opens the door and she's got a big zit on her nose. You might say, oh my goodness.
It's like finding she's wearing Spanx.
Yeah. You know, and I hate to sound, you know, I hate to use that as an analogy, but it's an easy one to visualize. And so, you know, obviously when you see 565 million shares out, you might gulp hard and say, sorry, that's enough to kill my interest, even though I like everything else about it. Now, heading into pre-mass hysteria, which we hope happens in this space, we remove the zit, basically. Right. And then now the new investor who may see Azincourt for the first time does not have that same barrier to entry that we had prior. And I think that's another reason to do what we did and to do it now. And I really believe we're going to hold our value. Look, to go from 7 to 10, we had to chew through 40 million shares. To go from, you know, post consolidation 15 to 25, you know, we could probably do that, and there's less in the way.
Well, so, and here we are, you know, looking at your stock price is around 8 cents. Yeah. There have been times it's gone down as much as 5 and up as much as 12. You're only moving it to 16, right? It's not like you're saying, okay, we're going to do a 10 for 1 and then pretend that we're a $1.60 stock, right? Yeah. So it's pretty clear that this is housekeeping. And a lot of those institutional guys, when they're confronted with an 8 cent stock, you know, everybody knows they got to convince their boss that that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. When
very much.
You get it into the 20 cent range, no one's got much of a problem. But I've spoken to guys in your position who will quietly say when their stock is over $1, I don't really know what to do up here. Like this space is it's not where I'm used to being. I'm used to being back down in the pennies. So getting it to a place where you've got the ability to do another raise if you need to, without the stock blowing out. You've got the ability for the stock to move a little faster, up or down, but, you know, a little bit more volatile, more open for a trade. You know, you've had a lot of, if I look at your volatility over the last year, usually you've got companies that are either green days or red days. About half of your days are gray days, right? Yeah. Guys are buying in, guys are buying out. The stock's not moving because it takes so much to move it.
Yeah, it's very liquid, and we're not going to sacrifice that liquidity by just doing a 2.5 to 1 at 227 million out or whatever we'll have. We'll still be plenty liquid,
right?
And you know, but we'll be liquid in that 15 to 20 cent range, where again, there's also, look, down here at 8 cents. You know the drill, Chris. A half penny is a decent percentage flip. So you get a lot of algorithms, you get a lot of day traders, you get a lot of volume traders who come in because it's cycling so much. They can just play between 6 and 8 all day, every day, week to week. It's a machine. Now at 18 cents, 16 cents, 18 cents, the percentage is 2.5 times less. and we're going to see less algorithms. We're going to see less trading. We will still see it because it's in every stock, everywhere, listed all over the place. So we can't shed it entirely, but we'll certainly be able to cut down on the number of algorithms and things that seem to, play in our space every day.
Traditionally, whenever a rollback is announced, stock price goes down, right? You've always got the weak hands that are like, yeah, peace out, I'll come back later. Yeah. And because that happens, then you've got other people that aren't necessarily weak hands, but they know that it comes down and they're going to buy it back cheaper tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah.
You announced yesterday, today's trading, you only dropped 0.5 cent.
Yeah, and it was amazing because I think at one point today we were down, below 2 million on the bid at 7, which is, not normal. We usually have, there's usually 3, 4, 5 million shares every day in there. And so it was starting to get eroded a little bit. Mm-hmm. The offers became a little heavy, but then it rebalanced as the day went on. There was probably 5 million on the bid at 7. And at the end of the day, it looked like there was some flush where day traders have to close out positions. And we saw that at the end of the day, but the stock held exceptionally well. And I think for the most part, it's been well accepted. There will be people who may not understand the entire scope, and that they're free to have their opinions as to whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. But I do believe that we've just given ourselves an opportunity for that market cap to get some of the value we think should be there now. By doing this, we free up. There's a less restrictive path ahead of us.
It's interesting. The number of first-time CEOs that look at their share price day to day, hour by hour, and freak out at every 0.5 cent, and put out news accordingly. It's the experienced guys that come in and say, okay, well, we know what way the tides are blowing. Mm-hmm. We know that money wants to come into this stock, and the problem for it is that when it doesn't really move the meter unless it's fat money, right? Yeah. So, this move that you're making here, yeah, you know that you're going to have people that are going to be like, throw their cards in the air, but obviously not that many. And in a situation like this, with limited impact. So what you've actually done is you're saying, okay, you've ripped the Band-Aid off. Now what, right? Now there's no problems. Now you just move forward as you were going to move forward.
Yeah, and that's funny because most situations result in, after the Band-Aid comes off, there might be a little bit more infection, because what happens is you get, if the stock comes back and you have to dilute again. Listen, if everything goes well, first of all, we don't need to raise money. So, we've got more money than we actually need at the moment. We'll probably spend a lot of it next winter. That's what we do, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. There's no immediate need to finance if the stock stays at 16, 17, 18, comes back to 12, 13, 14, 15 for a little while. It doesn't matter. We're not financing at that point. So there's no dilution in the near future. Right. And then I think when we do finance, we could be doing it at 20 or 25 cents, which is far less dilutive than what we've just gone through. So we fought the bear. Yep. We have some scars from that. Those scars was the 500 million share float. And you can't fight a bear and not come out of that with some kind of a scar, and we did. But now we've addressed it, and I think we've cleaned it up, and I think this is really a good move. We debated it back and forth behind the scenes for weeks and months, and I don't like rollbacks for all the reasons that retail doesn't like it. Right. But again, we're not doing it because, as you mentioned, we're out of money. We don't have a project, and there's too many shares out. We did it for the right reasons, which is tighten it up. And we could have gone more. Some people said, do 3, do 5. No, 2.5 is fine. 227 million for a uranium company that's been a uranium company for almost 10 years. That's fine. We can live with that.
I might have gone 3x, but I feel comfortable around 20 cents. Like, I feel like that's a price where people, I think there's a psychological level for anything under 10
visual
cents, right?
Yeah, absolutely visual.
So many people don't look at market cap ever. They just look at the share price and say, oh, this company's bullshit because it's under 10 cents.
Exactly.
You've taken that out. You've still got a good market cap. I think you've weathered the storm that you're going to weather. And, now it's all steam ahead. It's full steam ahead. So, and at the right time. Now, uranium's had its ups and downs over the last few years. Yeah. You guys have kind of missed the ups because it took so many shares traded to actually elevate it. So now you're able to actually set sail into those trade winds a bit.
No, perfect. And that's why we thought now is another reason. Listen, we've had sort of teases in this sector. Oh, it's happening. Oh, it's not. Oh, it's happening. Oh, it's not. And we haven't been able to move much in those. We've moved to 9, 10 last fall, but with 500 million shares out and the liquidity combination, yeah, to move 2 cents is a 30, 40 million share exercise. It's a lot of earth to move.
Yeah.
So, now we've changed that. And I think when this is actually implemented sometime between now and the 15th of April, I think we're going to do fine post-consolidation. I don't think we're going to have too many people bailing. I think we'll hold it. And I think the smart money was on the bid today. As the day went on, the bids picked up, and I think people realized, you know what, this isn't a bad move at all. So,
yeah.
But I've answered a lot of questions on email today. A lot of people just asking for clarity on the strategy, and that thank you for allowing me to come on and inviting me to come on and be able to clarify it. It saves me having to write 100 emails. Thank you.
The internal discussion that has to happen, getting a couple of people on the same wavelength is difficult. Getting an entire board, getting your executive team. I'm sure there was discussions with your geos, with advisors, with people who are in the deal, big investors, the guys that want to be big investors. And to get where you are, I'm guessing that you needed to get everybody agreeing that it was the good strategy. That's an achievement in and of itself.
Yeah, thanks for that. But, and I regret I didn't get to everybody. We have about 4,000 shareholders. So it's a little hard. I know who the big ones are. I didn't get to all of them, so apologies. But everybody kind of knew something was up. And behind the scenes, the biggest thing here was making sure that the funds understood that this was a possibility before closing the placement. The last thing you want to do is close a placement and then tell them. I think that would have been a really lousy thing to do.
And that's normally the way. It's like, hey, we got the money. Sorry.
No, we made sure, and I have email threads, believe me, to make sure that I knew that that there was disclosure here. We didn't really know if it's going to be a 2 or 2.5, but we ended up at 2.5 because there was 5 million on the table, and we just thought the math made sense.
Yep.
But they all knew before close, and not one order was pulled. And there were some big funds in this deal. A couple of new funds. I mean, we're up to 28 different institutional funds in this deal, which if you had pulled me aside in 2018.
28?
Yeah, if you would come to me.
Up. You're a liar.
That's hilarious.
No way.
No, it's absolutely true. And I can, I can share a list with you. Some of the funds don't really like to be broadcast, but it's true. But a couple of them, the large funds that came in for the first time this time. And so, I think, when you have that level of support, we know upon discovery, impactful, meaningful discovery of the mineralized hole we know is in our future. We're going to have plenty of money to drill and define a resource and continue to drill. They like our story. They like our projects. And that's the only thing I can think of. I don't understand, like I said, 2 years ago, if you'd come to me and said, you're going to have 28 funds in the deal and you'll have raised 15 or 20 million in a year and a half, before you made discovery, I would have told you were the liar. But, it's worked out that way. And I think that's really a wonderful endorsement, not only of the project and projects we have, but of the space and where it's going. Big smart money pouring into this space. I mean, Barclays, some of the bigger U.S. banks, Goldman Sachs came out and said they're long uranium, and suddenly, all of a sudden, you're starting to see that, which is really a good tip of the iceberg, I think.
So let me ask you a question that's a little bit more broad. Just while I got you, the London Metals Exchange has gone through a few things over the last month or two with the nickel short, with backing trades out of where they were. Uranium is really dependent on the LME to as it stands. Do you see that changing? Do you see maybe there being other alternatives out there going forward where maybe uranium gets a little bit out of the secret chamber that it lives in and a bit more public?
I think so, and I think it's I mean, with the private buying that's been going on, it's already different than it was in the past. Obviously,
Yep.
the spot and things like that. I mean, I'd like to know if I wanted to go in and start buying uranium, do I need a secure facility? I mean,
Yeah.
like where are they putting? They're not putting it down at the used storage. I mean, I don't know where it's going, but in any case, I do think things are going to loosen up or change and be a little bit more independent of the ways that have been in the past. But it's going to happen fast. And unfortunately, what people have to realize is if you look historically at the spikes in the spot price over the long-term charts, you'll see that those spikes are quite dramatic in the ascent, and they're quite dramatic on the descent. So they'll go to 120 and they'll come straight back down pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
They don't stay up there long-term highs. But I think this is different because we've had 10 years of a bear. The last run in 2011 really came only a few years after 2007. So that there wasn't the pent up situation that we have now. And there are more contracts that need to be signed now than ever before. So that might also have a huge pull. I think it's going to be different this time. And some of the funds that I talked to prior to this news release yesterday were exceptionally bullish in terms of the spot price and where they thought it was going to go. And
it's really obvious that the energy situation globally is in a major shift right now, right? Like, Germany's sitting there saying, well, we don't want to put too much pressure on Russia. Keep the gas pipes moving, Mr. Ruski. All that stuff is going to change. There's going to be a lot of countries that need to find different ways to keep the lights on. And, there's problems with a lot of green energy options, with wind, with solar. You got to get batteries. Nuclear kind of seems like its time has come. Like it's if you're going to plan for the future,
it's safer than it's ever been. I still wonder why engineers are allowed to build these things on top of faults, but that's not my business.
Right.
But I do. They're getting smaller. They're modular. The reactors are more self-contained, and
you got battleships with their own nuclear power stations, right? Like,
nothing's blown up yet. Thank God. Knock on wood. But and then in Ukraine, when the Russians were firing on the largest reactor in Western Europe, and there was big fear. I mean, my phone blew up one night, and I'm like, oh God, what's happening? And there's a fire at a nuclear reactor in Ukraine. But that quieted down awfully quick, didn't it? And that's because these things are safer than they've ever been, and they're not foolproof 100%. I mean, anything could happen. A black swan does, live in that netherworld, and they can pop their heads up. But I don't think we're going to see anything like we've seen in the past. And that's the real big fear in this space. Really, is that something awful happens.
Right, your Fukushimas, your Chernobyls, but your 3 Mile Islands. But those are, definitely things that have been factored into new design.
No, 100%. And they're getting better, and they're getting smarter. And, we know the technology's there. As you mentioned, look at the battleships and the aircraft carriers and the other things that are running on nuclear power.
For sure. So, congratulations on getting through what could have been a rough moment for your company. I'm going to say, and I do this acknowledging that we've been friends for a while and that you're a client, but I see the fact that you've got through this unscathed as being a real nod to the work that you've personally put into this company over the last several years, right? You've definitely kept the home fires burning when it would have been easy to walk away and go and start a weed deal or
that almost happened.
Shroom deal or a blockchain deal or an esports deal. You've been on this thing for a while, and it's starting to pay off. You've played the long game. You've always been open to everybody. And as a journalist, I appreciate that whenever I've asked you a tough question, that you've had a good answer and haven't shirked away. So
I like it because I've got nothing to hide. We've got nothing to hide, and that's it. It's not an easy business, and there should be tough questions, and we should stammer at times to answer them. Because it's a business that it's a crafty business. It's got a lot of kinks in it, and you have to be I've always been confident in the answers. I mean, we're doing everything for the right reasons. It's funny that you mentioned that we could have folded shop and become a weed deal. We almost did. And I've told you this at the end of 2019, we had 100 grand in the bank and nobody was taking our calls. And JV partners were telling us to pull their ticker symbols out of our news releases. I mean, it was really bad.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, I could have done it. I said no, because I know it's coming. I know it's coming. And we need to finish this JV, the terms of the JV ahead of the bull. We want to make sure we're done and clean and have the majority of it. And we managed to do it. That I guess contributed to the bloated share structure because I kept financing.
Right.
But I'm glad I did. And I think other people are too. But you know, it's not all me. We've got a great VP. This guy knows what he's doing in the field, and we've got great backers. I'm just the guy, you know.
I mean, you're the guy that at 4 o'clock in the morning is getting the calls from the East Coast saying, "All right, I got a question."
Yeah, no, I'm the guy you used to see on the old variety shows, and you and I are dating ourselves. I used to always talk about the guy who used to have the
spinning plates
on the sticks, right? Yeah, that's me. So as long as I can keep the plates on the sticks, I'm okay.
Man, it takes, I think, a special set of brass balls to be able to walk through the fire and then turn around and walk straight back through it again.
Yeah.
You've done a few laps over your time, so well done.
Thank you.
Now you're sitting on a lump of cash. I'm guessing that cash is going to go into the ground. That 100%. You're not going to be like, now that I have money, I'm going to go out there and start buying up some shit. No. If there was something for you to buy up, I'm guessing that you would go and do a separate financing for that.
Yeah, listen, we get offered stuff. There's stuff out there that I know of. We'll look, but we would only listen. We're an exploration company. We're the feral cats, right? So we want to make the discovery. That's what we like to do, and that's what we're chasing. The other project we have, Hatchet Lake in the northeastern part of the basin, we'll be drilling there for the first time this coming winter. We think there's discovery there as well. There's already uranium on the property, so it's a little bit more advanced than East Preston, let's say. But we've got 2 projects. We've got lots of money, and we're going to spend it. But we know, listen, everything right now is more expensive. Not just the bread and cheese at the grocery store. When we go into the field, all of the service providers they're charging more. The fuel costs are way out of line now. So we did need more money. We were over budget, as we put in a news release a couple of weeks back, or when we announced the end of the drill program. We were over budget, and that had everything to do with cold weather and everything to do with increased fuel costs and road maintenance because of the cold weather. So that also has to be taken into account. What was a reasonable budget for drilling is now changed, and so more capital helps.
Let me ask you something that I think is really important on the uranium side, because there are only so many retail investors look at resource companies because they've got to educate themselves on what's good drill results, what's bad drill results.
Yeah.
And only so many of those know what good results are for uranium. Mm-hmm. What should people be looking for or looking at when the news comes down that would say to them, this is actually something good?
Yeah, well, here's an interesting thing, right? So the world average grade, the world average is like 0.2%. Right. So when you're getting to, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 1%, those are decent grades. And they don't appear to be because the numbers are quite small.
In relation to gold and.
Right. And the other thing, listen, for in where we're concerned, for example, East Preston, as I mentioned, we have 1,700 meters of alteration to dive through. Somebody put out a news release the other day about a drill result, and they were talking about a 6 or 10 meter alteration zone. We have 100-meter alteration zones in some of these holes. So we're talking about some really interesting, material beneath the ground that acts as these filters to drop the uranium. We think it's there. We don't know really where. But here's something to think about: the zone 2 at MacArthur River, the footprint of that deposit, which is a 200 million pound deposit. We're looking at 90 meters by 40 meters by 70 meters. So 90 meters long by 40 meters wide by 70 meters deep. Okay. And it holds that much. So these are small footprints. So we've been drilling 200, 400, 500 meter spacings along these corridors. Now that we've run into this alteration zone, the goal is to tighten it up. Some of these drill programs, when you start to get into this stuff, are 30-meter spacings. So we haven't gotten anywhere near that. We haven't tightened anything up. So people are waiting to see what our assay results are. look, we're looking for good geochem. We're looking for trace elements. We're looking for teases and snips. Sure, we'd like to see something large. But we do know when we start to tighten up the grids, we're gonna get into some interesting stuff. And now we have the capital to go back and do it again without blinking. Now we could have done it, but it turned out to be about a 4 million program, and we thought we'd spend 2.5 or 3.
When you're drilling for gold, and you've got a little historic over here, and you've got some drill results over there, and you can kind of do the math in the middle there a little bit. The tendency recently has been for companies to say, we're not going to go for the epic 43101. We know there's a big chunk over here that we can get to. We're just going to get a drill. We're going to get our permits. We're going to get in that little bit, and we'll let the gold guide us from that point forward.
Yeah.
Sometimes successful, sometimes not. Uranium, is that an option, or do you really need to sort of get the full scope of things to make the economics work?
Yeah, I'll tell you what's interesting. A lot of the deposits that we're dealing with in the area that we're in, for example, these are chutes. They're almost legs to what was a near surface deposit at one point.
Okay.
Millennials ago, the near surface stuff is washed out somewhere into the North Pacific.
Yeah.
So what's left are these chutes, these legs to the table, if you will. So when you're dealing with these verticals, they're harder to drill, they're harder to find because you can miss them, and that's where patience has to come in. We know that uranium deposition takes time to find. Some of the people who've made discoveries on the first hole, you want to tip your hat to their technical team, but you also know that Lady Luck had a lot to do with it.
For sure.
What we're finding, if you had told me, and I'm telling people this, if we had drilled a big hole before finding the alteration, we'd be scratching our heads. We'd be happy, but we'd be saying, how the hell did that just happen?
Right.
So now that we see the alteration and we see the scope of it and how geological makeup of it, the geochemical makeup of it, of course, the assays are going to tell us more. But we look at that and we're like, wow, okay, this is getting really interesting. And I think that's why the funds also were eager to sort of throw the money at us. They also see the same thing we do.
A lot of resources for uranium, a lot of projects require the moving of, let's say, a lake, or at least getting into it in such a way in the seasons where you can.
Yeah.
Tell me about your property in terms of that. Like, is it available to you easily, or are you going to have to move a mountain or likewise?
Yeah, no, look, these are pretty shallow targets. We're in the 150 to 350 meter range. Why we're on the fringe, both with Hatchet Lake and East Preston, on the fringes of the basin is the sandstone cover. The Athabasca sandstone is only 20 meters, 30 meters deep. Where in the middle of the basin, you're going through 300 meters, 400 meters before you're in the zone, right?
Right.
So cheaper holes, everything's better for us in that sense. But it's the right place geologically speaking for a small cap. But also we've got big neighbors at East Preston. We've got Orano and NextGen. So there's the big guys are in there too. It took a while. I mean, it took a couple of discoveries in the fringe for people to begin to go, oh, these are viable target areas.
Mm-hmm.
So there was still open area around the basin that hadn't been staked, up until a year or 2 or 3 ago or hadn't been worked simply because it just wasn't a huge viable target. The spot price was weak. The sector had no love. And that ground was sort of sitting there. But the people in the know did understand that these were very viable areas to look for deposits. You don't have to be in the traditional areas to find it.
Right. So you don't need to be a future $100 billion company. 100 million will do just fine.
Yeah, sure. I'll take it. And I think the feral cat thing is a good analogy for explorers. People always wonder, they say you don't need to take the money. You've never been through a bear where,
people who say you don't need to take the money have never had someone shove $1,000 in their face and say, put your face in my soup and blow. Like, take the money, man, when it's offered. You never know how long the drought's going to go.
No, exactly. And I think it's exceptionally important to make sure the number one muscle you have as an explorer is cash in the bank.
Yeah.
And now we have,
Well,
we're
how many
back to our,
bodies have floated by in the last 3, 4 years when cash was hard to come by? Like you've seen them. The
yeah,
guy sets up in the next office to you, puts out
yeah.
a shingle with uranium in the title, disappears 6 months later. You go to the investor conferences, you see the nameplates of the guys that were supposed to be there but never quite made it. Like,
Here's the funny part. I remember some uranium companies changing their names to whatever, and then contemplating changing it back to put uranium in the title again. Yeah. So we were Azincourt Uranium when I got involved, and I changed the name to Azincourt Energy precisely for those reasons. Simply because we couldn't get a phone call returned with uranium. Hi, I'm Alex from Azincourt Uranium. You take my call. No. Hey, it's Alex from Azincourt Energy. Yeah, I'll call you back.
mm-hmm.
That sounds interesting. What are you
Where
guys
are
doing?
you drilling for oil and gas?
Yeah. Where's your energy source? Right. So, but that's the nature of the game. What I like is now there's a billion uranium companies, which is always the first sign. Institutional money pours into the sector.
Everyone
Suddenly there's more catchers to catch that money, and they pop up everywhere. Everybody and all my House Street buddies and all the guys I know in the world, everybody's got a uranium company right now, and that's fine. We've been a uranium company all along. We didn't change our stripes. We added, we got flexible. We brought in some lithium assets at a time, and then I think there was some bank out of the U.S. decided that lithium there was going to be there'd be too much supply. And it killed it, and we couldn't get drill permits, so that whole thing kind of went fizzled. But look, our bread and butter all along has been uranium. We've continued to work with uranium projects. We continue to fund it and put the majority of the money that we have into it, and I think it's going to pay off. I think there's a discovery waiting to happen at East Preston, and apparently other people do too.
Well, I guess the big news here is that you're going for it. And hey, a lot of well-meaning, respectable people that have raised money over the years use that money to make sure that they've got a job for the next year and the next year and the year after that. But you got your flow through. You're banging it into the ground.
Yeah, and we again we've spent, before we put a drill in the ground, we've spent $2.5 million on this project. That's what good targeting costs. So when you get, if you have a very small project and you have, you don't have a lot of target ground, it's not going to cost you much. We have 25,000 hectares with 30 kilometers of target zones that we've delineated. Now, they all need to be drill tested. They all warrant drill testing. So it's a big project. It's big in scale. Again,
devil's advocate on this though. A lot of companies, when they do their drill program, they drill exactly where they know there's already something that they're going to come up with. Because it's a news release. It's not really exploration. It's well, we've got historic numbers. We're just going to second those. We're going to twin those. Are you going out? Are you taking an opportunity to take some chances here that, hey, maybe you come up with dust on one or two?
No, listen, East Preston, the entire thing was virgin ground. It had never really been drill tested in any sense of the term. So we put lots of money into the geochem, into the surveys, the airborne surveys, geophysical surveys, and that's how we got to where we're at. And what we did it methodically. We didn't fast track it. We're not getting hung up on little things. We're incrementally improving the project every round of work we do. From the very beginning, when I got involved, the very early surveys we did gave us some, the corridors. And we've further delineated what's in those corridors, the graphitic packages, the better geochem. We got a little bit of trace uranium last year. We got the evidence of that uranium bearing fluids had moved through the area. That's all good. This year, now we've moved it needle even further. We had 10 times background radioactivity. We've got a huge alteration zone, 2 of them, in fact, 1,200 and 500 meters, and both open. Neither one of them have been shut. So they'll expand. This is big news. What's next? The logical outcome here at some point is going to be a hole that we go, bingo, there's what we're after. And again, where is it? It's somewhere. But again, there's a lot of ground to cover. We have the money to cover it. We just spent $4 million and we just replaced it before we've even had an assay result. That's another thing.
That's some confidence.
Yeah, I mean, people aren't waiting to say, well, we'll see, we'll see if you get anything, and then we'll fund you again. They're saying, no, we get what you're doing here. We're seeing the incremental progress. This is leaning in the right direction. It's going the right way. Here's more money. Continue to do what you're doing, and that's a huge endorsement.
There's a lot of companies, I guess, that over the years, they scrape together some financing here and there. Maybe they chuck out a drill hole or two because it's what they can raise. Yeah. And people look at that and say, well, I see you over the last 4 years, not really, you haven't got your bingo bango discovery yet. Your share price is where it was. But these things they culminate, they're like biotech, right? When a biotech company is going through FDA trials, they don't sort of like raise gradually. Yeah. They stay where they are. And then one morning you wake up and read a news release and say, well, that's why my portfolio is up by a digit.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, it's perfect. And that's a perfect comparison because it's exactly what it is. I mean, retail is the average investor is going, oh, alteration. What does that mean? There's no uranium. I don't see any uranium in your news release.
Right.
Well, I guess it's a failure. On a geological side, on a technical side, they're going, wow. When we first started running into this stuff in the holes, the geologists on site were beside themselves. They were like, this is fantastic. And see, Trevor Perkins, our VP Exploration, brought this modeling. He's the guy who said, listen, we are going to chase alteration. We're going, once we find it. So a lot of holes went deeper because Trevor said, we're not pulling a hole in the middle of the alteration. We're going to go as deep as the alteration does. And so we got this idea now. We have an idea, visual beneath the surface of these corridors and how the fluids could have moved, where they could have dropped the uranium. And this is incredible data. Remember, when you drill, you're drilling blind. There's no way to see what you're doing under the ground. You really have to read the geochem, read what comes up in those drill cores, and begin to piece it together. It's a real science. And
you're playing Battleship, basically.
Yeah, you sunk my Battleship.
Yeah,
I remember that. Great game. Boy, I don't know. And then it went electronic in the 80s. It had sound effects.
All right.
Yeah. If you had 3 or 4 pegs on your aircraft carrier, that was good.
So if you can hit a battleship or two in this next round of drill results, then things are going to move quickly.
Yeah, no, Wilson, we're excited. We're happy. We're hoping that people understand the news yesterday and what it means. It's not a negative. We do not believe we're going to lose market cap. In fact, we think we've cleared a path to get the market cap.
To only lose 0.5% today on essentially a red day.
Yeah.
But to only lose 0.5%, you do that on a regular Tuesday. You'd gain it back on a Wednesday.
This is great too, because it's the first time I've done an interview with anybody where they drop the F-bomb.
Oh, come on, you know me. I'm the cleanest motherfucker in the game.
Yeah, let's put this. Yeah, this should be on Netflix.
You missed before because you don't have video of me. But when I said, this is you, I've got some.
That's not you.
This is the institution. I was like making it rain 50s from petty cash. But
yeah, I'm looking at that logo. I keep thinking that's some sort of secret, society in an Asian country. I don't know what I'm looking at.
My logo.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably something in there that the
isn't that what they throw isn't that one of those throwing stars that you see in Sonny Chiba movies?
Well, we make more money from wrestling now than we do from the public market. So, who's to say what it is, really?
Yeah. Combat. Yeah. Hey, this is combat. We're in the trenches.
The same skill set. If you can take a power bomb, you can be a CEO of a resource podcast.
That's what we do. It is combat every day. Are you kidding me? I mean, if you don't have a competitive edge, you don't, you got to be able to take a punch and you got to keep going.
Look, I've never called you and not had you answer the phone. And I don't think that's because I'm, your favorite guy to talk to. I think it's because you answer your fucking phone.
I do. And that's a problem. And I showed, I don't mean it's a problem, but I showed somebody yesterday a screen grab, and I can even show you right here, right now. I think I had 143 WhatsApp messages to read.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And that was, well, and I like that. Somebody just emailed me the other day from Australia. And it was 2 lines, and it was just simply about wanting to see more news.
Right.
And it took me a day to reply, but I replied. And this guy was blown away. He was just It's like,
This
oh my
is what I'm
goodness.
getting at. It's like, like we got sales guys here that, they're trying to call companies. You can't even get someone to answer the phone most places. They've got the answering machine on. They're playing golf.
Yeah. Now
There's
listen,
no one at the reception desk anymore
I
because
should
of COVID.
clarify. I'll clarify. I will talk to retail investors all day long. I will talk to institutional investors all day long. I have less bandwidth for the people trying to sell me the pots and pans for my mining operation.
Of course.
I don't have time. Everybody has something to offer, and it takes, those people they can say, well, he doesn't answer his phone. No, I don't, because half the time you're offering me something I don't need.
Right.
And if I haven't replied to your 5th email by now, I'm probably not interested.
Yeah.
And that's not to say you're not offering me something that may be of value, but I already have it, or I don't have time.
Yeah, but you know who you work for. You work for the shareholders.
Yeah,
that's the thing,
and
right?
that's it. That's really the bottom line. And that's why it does break my heart when I see people freak out about certain moves we make. And in this instance, in particular, I want people to know. And if they have an issue, if somebody isn't comfortable with the move we just made, don't post about it anonymously on Twitter or whatever. You're not going to get any answer out of that.
Klenman screws the shareholders.
Yeah, exactly. The whole, Jason, right? Friday the 13th. Suddenly I'm the guy behind the mask. But call me. I will tell you exactly why we made the move and why we believe. We didn't do it for any other reason, but to make the value viable. We didn't do it for us. How does my life get it? I just did a 2.5-to-1 consolidation on my own holdings, on my own warrants, on my own options.
Right.
I'm in this thing. So, we think this is the right move. And
you know what? Like if you look at the 3-year chart of your stock price, right? It's only up, right? Yeah, 8 cents maybe still low, 7.5 cents maybe still low, like compared to, but it's been at 2 cents, right?
Yeah.
And in 2019, it spent months at 2-3 cents.
I know we had a
1.5
cent bid.
Yeah, you're at 8. Like you don't roll back a company because it's going up. Generally, if you're doing a panic rollback, it's because you've gone from $1 down to 5 cents.
Well,
and you need to take a raise too sweet.
I had people wanting to roll it back then, saying, sorry, it's over. I'm like, no, we don't need to do it. But it's the people who buy on the lows, knowing what they know is coming up, and nobody has a crystal ball. But I'd sure like to have been the guy buying millions of shares at $0.015.
Yeah, for sure. And I think those days seem to be long gone. Anyone who jumped on at 5 cents midway through last year got themselves an absolute goddamn bargain. But you have to go back like to 2018 when there was a bit of a uranium run happening back then for a spot where it was genuinely up above where it is right now.
Yeah, and that was really too on the lithium mania. At the end of 2017, we cut a deal for these projects in Manitoba, and the stock in January, February, March of that year just went crazy, and that was the first thing I did with Azincourt, and everybody was like, "Wow, who's this guy?" And not that it was me in any way. It was just I got the sail up and the wind came, and so you look at the guy in the boat and you go, "Hey, nice job."
Anyone who didn't make money on lithium back then wasn't really paying much attention.
My dog is barking. You hear my dog?
Yeah, the shareholders coming for you.
Release the hound. It's okay. Right, I love it. I'll take it, man. Bring it on. But anyway, listen, I love chatting with you as always, and I'm really appreciative for giving me a forum to vent and to get the message out.
Well, you know what I appreciate? The fact that you didn't try and get this done before your messaging went out. Right? You weren't saying, I'm going to try and like explain this before it happens. You put the news out, you let people soak it in. And then after the fact, hey, if people have questions, well, here we are, we've got some answers for you. But you didn't try and gain the space. It was just like, let's be as open as possible. I told you I was going to ask some prickly ones. You said, bring it on. Like, this is the way it's supposed to be. God damn it. If everyone did it this way, I wouldn't have a job, but God, the markets would be so much more fun.
Yeah, no. And I love it when people, get all over you anonymously on the chat boards or on social media. And one way that always kind of throws them back is if somebody gets in their face and says, well, call the management. They'll answer your phone call. Why don't you just tell them? I had people texting me on something, and they were like on a burner phone in Saskatoon.
Right.
And I'm like, who are you? Give me a name. And they wouldn't do it. And I'm like, you're going to complain on bad days. And then when I told one guy, I said, the next time you text me anonymously, I'm phoning this number. And I'm not going to stop calling it until you answer it. I haven't heard from him for a couple of weeks.
Well, you know what? My thing has always been the guys that are really pissed off about a rollback are the guys that are pissed off that their plans to sell your stock in the next few weeks might be a little bit damaged.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you're there for the long haul, it doesn't matter if it drops in the wake of the rollback. Eventually, it comes back up and away you go.
You want 1 million shares at 8, or you want 400,000 at 18,
right? And
with a better, with less speed bumps ahead of you, pick up momentum.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty obvious.
All right, man. I'm going to let you get back to answering your WhatsApps. Appreciate your time as always.
Yeah, thank you.
And any aspiring mining CEOs out there might want to watch this one on repeat a couple of times, because honestly, the open information, the transparency, the, dare I say, humanity, right? You're not giving me corporate speak. You're not giving me the IR speak. It's just straight up, here's a question, here's the answer. And I love it, man. I talk to you every day of the week. I
appreciate it, Chris. And thanks again for giving me the opportunity to come on and address what was a pretty important news release for us. So
we'll do it
again. Thank you.
Beauty.